Hello everyone, and welcome to Lancelot's Nerd Corner, where I'm proud to present my very first 12th scale review. Today we'll be taking a look at the reissued Hush Batman Black version by Mafex. Or Mafex, whichever you prefer. I like Mafex, sounds snappier. And I'm really glad to be giving you my honest and detailed account of the figure. So just like my 6th scale reviews, I want to start with the head sculpt, which overall is done really well. The sculpt work looks really great and shows amazing attention to detail. I especially like the creases on his forehead, showing that furrowed brow expression. I also really like these little sculpted ears on the side. It's a nice detail that Mafex made sure to include. And his other ears, the little bat ears on the top, are accurately short, and they're actually made of hard rubber, not plastic. And you can see because you can actually very slightly bend them, which I don't advise you do, but it's just a way to show that it is made of hard rubber, which is a good thing because if the figure falls or if it just has a bad drop, it reduces the risk of the bat ears snapping or chipping off if it was made of plastic. Because it's rubber, it's pretty much not going to happen. And overall, the paint app is generally very good, has the nice whited out eyes. There is a slight mishap right under the nose. I don't know if you can see it, but there's like these 3 little dots of black paint under there. I'm not sure why that was there, but yeah, other than that, the paint app is fine and definitely satisfactory. Now, the figure does come with an alternative head sculpt where Batman is sort of gritting his teeth. Other than that facial expression change, it's pretty much the same. Their paint app is a little different as they painted a little bit of pink around the mouth for his lips, which is clean enough, but what's weird are the teeth and how they're painted on. They have this black line in the middle, and I guess it was meant to convey the separation of the upper teeth to the lower, but it kind of just looks like he doesn't brush his teeth. From afar, I guess it does work pretty well, but up close, it's definitely noticeable. Alright, now let's move on to the figure itself, which stands at about 6.5 inches or 16.5 centimeters. And just like the head sculpt, the overall paint job is done really well. Don't really have any serious complaints. The only things that I found were these 2 little imperfections. One is right up here near the diaphragm joint, right above it. There's like this black dot, which is unfortunate to see. And I think the more egregious one is this dot of yellow paint right above the belt. That one is pretty noticeable, and that kind of, it sucks to see that. And I guess some of the bottom of the pouches could have been cleaned up a little bit more, but they still look great. And other than those things, the paint app is fantastic. I really like the muscle shading throughout the body. That really makes the muscles pop. And in fact, speaking of which, the sculpt work of this figure is tremendous. Like, Batman is built like a tank, just like in the comic books. And he has that crazy comic book physique where like you can see every striation of every muscle, and he's at like 5% body fat, but he's still massive, which as a comic book fan, I love to see that. And just like on the head sculpt with the bat ears, the spike gauntlets are also made of hard rubber, which again helps to decrease the risk of them chipping or snapping off if the figure accidentally falls. It also means that they're not as pointy or sharp, so less risk to you as the collector when you're posing it. I also really like the detail of the tread on the boots. They are sculpted absolutely fantastically, super detailed. Now, because this figure is a reissue, virtually everything about it is the same as the previous releases, and that does include the cape. There is a lot of it, and it is made out of a lightweight fabric with pretty strong wires. There are 4 wires, 2 on the sides and 2 kind of a little bit more inwards. Unfortunately, there isn't one down the middle, which does become a little bit of a problem when posing, but it's not a complete deal breaker. And I feel like with the first releases of these figures, with a gray and blue version as well, a lot of people did complain about how much cape there was. Some people didn't mind it, and I think it's honestly still the same. It's really up to personal preference. If you like the comic accuracy, because in the comic he did have a huge cape, or at least it was drawn that way in some panels, and if you like how long and flowy it is, you can get tons of folds, especially in dynamic poses, then you'll probably like this cape, or at least not mind it. But if you don't like how the fabric kind of gets in the way sometimes when you're posing, or just how much fabric there is, and it is a bit difficult to get it to cooperate at some points. So if you don't like those things, you're probably gonna be annoyed with the cape. Alright, now let's take a look at the articulation, which with Mafex figures are generally always amazing. So starting off with the head, it actually has a backwards bent peg, so you can get extra tilt upwards, and of course swivel side to side. Now the head itself can't look down a lot, it actually stops right there, but that's where the neck joint comes in, and you can get him looking down quite a lot. Again, looking up a ton, and some swivel and tilt side to side. The shoulder joint has the normal butterfly action, but there's actually an additional joint socket right in there that connects inside the torso, which provides even more butterfly action, as well as up and down. So you can really get the arms raised up pretty high. The shoulder joint allows the arm to swing back and forward, basically 360 degrees. Same thing with the bicep swivel, and there is a double bend on the elbow, although you can't fully take advantage of it as the forearm collides with the bicep. The diaphragm joint can extend backward and crunch forward, and of course the torso can swivel, tilt, side to side and back to front. The leg has a drop down joint, so you can squeeze out a little bit more articulation. It can raise up this high, you can get it a little bit higher, but you have to swivel the thigh a bit. And unfortunately, you can only swing the leg back this far. It can raise laterally about that much, and there is a double bend on the knee, which you can fully take advantage of. The ankle can tilt forwards and backwards quite a lot, and of course, there is toe flexion. Now that we've covered the entire figure, let's take a look at all the accessories the figure comes with. The figure comes with the alternative head sculpt that we already covered, as well as 6 extra pair of hands, 2 grappling hooks, 2 large batarangs, 2 smaller batarangs, a diorama display base, and a regular display base. The hands include a pair of open palm, which are pretty straightforward, and a pair of grabbing hands, which are pretty versatile. You can use them with both batarangs. The smaller one works a little bit better though. You can even have him pinching it in between his fingers, like so. And you can also use these hands to grab the cape, the sides of the cape, in a dynamic pose. And a pair of these hands that are gripping batarangs in between their fingers. There's a pair of relaxed hands, again, pretty straightforward. A pair of fists, but these ones are actually a little bit different because the thumb is lifted a little bit off the knuckles of the other fingers, whereas there's another pair of fists that are just completely closed like this. And lastly, a pair of hands that are holding the grapnel gun. The 2 grappling hooks allow for 2 different display options. One of them is just the hook itself, and the other one is the hook plus a long wire. Both of them simply plug into the grapnel gun in one of the hands, like so. One thing to note is when you're inserting this wire into the grapnel gun, hold it by the wire itself, especially if you're pulling it out, because if you hold it by the grappling head, there's a chance that it could come off like this. You can just put it back in, but it might get loose over time or whatever, so try to hold it by the wire itself. The larger batarang is a lot more curved and has that ridge down the middle, while the smaller batarang has a lot more of that classic look, with the serrated bottom edge that looks like bat wings, and especially the little bat head on top. The diorama display base is this awesome base that's meant to look like a rooftop with a sort of gargoyle design. It kind of looks like one of those designs at the top of the Chrysler building, I believe. And the sculpt work is just tremendous. You can see all this texturing on the gargoyle itself, as well as the base. There's some really detailed cracks on the side, And the gargoyle head is actually meant to look like, I think, an eagle head, as you can clearly see the eyes and the beak. Again, sculpt work is tremendous, and the paint app really makes it look weathered, like the elements have just taken their toll on this thing. And there's a little socket for the articulated arm or the straight pole. Lastly, the regular display base is just your regular Mafex display base. It has 3 different sockets for 3 different positions of the articulated arm and the straight pole, and it has 3 different attachments: the crotch cradle, the narrow waist grabber, and the wider waist grabber. And that's about it for the Hush Batman black version by Mafex. It was an incredible figure back then, both the black and gray version and the blue and gray one, and it still is. Reissued today, it's still an incredible figure. Amazing articulation, fantastic sculpt work, great paint app, although there's a teeny little bit of paint imperfections here and there. It's not a huge deal breaker at all. And overall, it's such an accurate and awesome representation of Batman from the comic book Hush. And I'm so glad I picked this one up. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this review helpful, please feel free to like and subscribe. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.